I never thought my life would turn into a storm so violent that it would sweep away every piece of warmth I once knew. Once upon a time, there was a version of me who believed in love, in family, in the gentle promises whispered between a husband and wife. I had believed in him, the man who had once held my hand and promised that no matter how difficult the road became, we would walk it together. I believed so deeply that I gave him not only my youth, but also the most sacred gifts life can offer. 2 small children, born from my body, carrying the softness of my blood and my soul. But the man I once loved was no longer the same. Day after day, he drowned himself in alcohol. His eyes, once tender, turned distant and cold. His hands, once a shelter, trembled with rage whenever the bottle was near. I endured for a long time, telling myself he might return to the person I once knew. But the truth is, people sometimes drift so far away from who they were that no amount of waiting can bring them back. That night is etched into me forever. The baby was crying, only a few weeks old, while my older child, barely 2, clung to my dress with tiny fingers. My husband, reeking of liquor, shouted words I cannot forget. "Get out! Take them and leave! I don't want to see you again!" His face twisted with anger, his voice cutting like knives. I tried to plead, to remind him of the children, but he was deaf to me. In that moment I realized I was no longer a wife in his eyes, nor were our children treasures to him. We were burdens. With trembling arms I gathered what little I could. A thin blanket, a small bag, a few scraps of food, and, most importantly, my 2 children pressed against my chest. I stepped into the night, the cold air biting my skin. Behind me, the door slammed shut with a sound so final it felt like the end of everything I had once been. I had nowhere to go, no family to take me in, no friend close enough to open their door at such an hour. The village felt like a place of shame, where everyone knew what had happened. I walked aimlessly under the weak light of the moon, the dirt road stretching endlessly. The cries of my baby pierced the silence while my older child asked in a soft voice, "Mama, where are we going?" I had no answer. Hours turned into dawn. My feet ached, my body shivered, and yet I could not stop. For them, for the little lives that depended on me, I had to keep moving. By some strange twist of fate, the path led me deep into the woods. It was there that I stumbled upon an abandoned house, half hidden by vines and shadows. Its roof was broken, the walls cracked, but to me it looked like a miracle. A shelter, a place where at least the wind and rain could not easily reach my children. I pushed the door open, and the scent of dust and damp wood greeted me. The floor creaked beneath my steps. Sunlight filtered through broken windows, falling upon old furniture left to rot. But in that desolate space, I laid down the blanket, placed my baby upon it, and for the first time since leaving the house, I allowed myself to cry. The tears flowed silently. They were not just for the cruelty of the man I had once loved, but for the uncertain future now pressing against me. How would I feed them? How would I keep them warm? How could I, a woman with nothing left, build a world for these 2 tiny hearts who looked at me as if I was their whole universe? I had no answers, but I had no choice. When I looked at their faces, innocent, trusting, I knew I could not surrender. Whatever it took, I would fight. The forest became both my enemy and my companion. I learned to search for edible plants, wild herbs, and fruits that grew beneath the shadows. I remembered lessons my grandmother had once told me when I was a child. Which leaves were safe, which berries to avoid, how to boil roots to make them less bitter. I gathered them carefully, feeding my older child small pieces while keeping myself strong enough to nurse the baby. The days blurred together. Each morning, I woke to the sound of birds and the sight of sunlight spilling into the broken house. Each night, I curled my children into my arms, whispering lullabies though my throat ached. Hunger was constant, but somehow we endured. One afternoon, I found a tree heavy with ripe fruit. My heart lifted. With care, I gathered what I could, cradling them in the folds of my dress. These fruits became not only food, but also hope. I could trade some with villagers at the forest edge for rice, salt, maybe even cloth. For a moment, I felt the faintest spark of possibility, as though life was offering us a hand to hold. But hope is fragile, and sometimes the world can be crueler than we imagine. The day I returned to the tree where I had found the fruit, I carried my baby on my chest and held my little boy's hand. I wanted him to see something beautiful, to taste sweetness instead of hunger. But when we reached the clearing, my heart froze. The branches were bare, the ground was littered with smashed fruit, stomped into the soil as if someone had gone out of their way to destroy every piece. I knew immediately it wasn't an accident. The footprints told me enough. Men had been there, perhaps hunters or wanderers, but their intentions had been cruel. They hadn't taken the fruit to eat. They had destroyed it so that no one else could. My boy tugged on my hand, asking softly, "Mama, where are the fruits?" I swallowed the lump in my throat and forced a smile. "The fruits will grow again, my love. We just have to wait." But inside, despair gnawed at me. I felt powerless, as though the world itself conspired to test how much I could endure before breaking. That night, after putting the children to sleep, I sat by the broken window and stared out at the moon. My thoughts wandered back to the man who had cast us out. Did he sleep peacefully while we starved? Did he care at all that his children were cold and hungry? I clenched my fists, anger and sorrow mixing inside me until I trembled. Yet, in the silence of the night, when the baby whimpered and my older child turned in his sleep, reaching for me even in his dreams, I felt a fire return to my chest. No matter what had been taken from me, no matter how cruel the world could be, I still had a purpose. These two souls were mine to protect, and I would not let despair swallow me. The days grew colder. I learned to set traps with sticks and string, hoping to catch small animals. Often they failed, but sometimes I brought back a rabbit or a bird. Cooking over a small fire in the broken hearth, I would feed the children first, always first, watching their eyes light up as they tasted warmth. Every small victory kept me alive. When I found mushrooms hidden under damp logs, I felt like I had discovered treasure. When I gathered rainwater in an old pot I had found in the abandoned kitchen, it was as precious as gold. My body grew thinner, my hands rougher, but my spirit held. Still, shadows lurked beyond the trees. One evening I heard voices outside the house, men laughing, their words slurred by drink. My heart raced as I pulled my children close and blew out the small flame of our fire. The footsteps came near, circling the house, then moved away, but the fear lingered. I realized then that survival was not only about food and shelter, but also about safety. I began teaching myself to move silently, to gather supplies without drawing attention. I avoided the villagers more and more, fearful that pity or cruelty might bring danger to us. The loneliness was crushing. Days passed when I spoke only to my children, my voice soft, my songs carrying more sorrow than joy. Sometimes I wondered if I was vanishing, if the woman I used to be was already gone, replaced by a ghost that haunted this broken house. But whenever I looked into the wide, trusting eyes of my children, I knew I was still here. I had to be. Seasons shifted. Rain hammered the roof, leaking through holes that I patched with scraps of wood and cloth. Winds howled, rattling the broken shutters. Yet inside, we huddled together, a small island of warmth against the storm. One morning, after a particularly harsh night, I stepped outside to find the forest glittering with frost. My boy gasped at the sight, tiny breath puffing like smoke, while I shivered at the thought of what lay ahead. Winter would be our hardest battle yet. Part 3. Endurance in winter. I gathered firewood obsessively, stacking it high inside the house. My hands bled from splinters, but I pressed on. Fire was life, and without it, my children would not survive the cold. Food grew scarce, fruits and plants withered, animals disappeared into their burrows. I rationed everything, eating less and less myself to save enough for them. Hunger became a constant ache. Some nights I would rock the baby in my arms while my stomach twisted with emptiness. My boy would sometimes whisper, "Mama, are you hungry?" And I would smile and shake my head. "No, my love, I'm full. Eat." He would nod, believing me, and I would feel both pride and heartbreak. In the silence of those endless winter nights, I often wondered if anyone would ever find us, if anyone would ever care. But then I would remind myself, even if the world forgot me, I could not forget them. They were the reason I still breathed. One day, desperate, I ventured deeper into the forest than ever before. Snow crunched under my feet, and my breath stung my lungs. I carried the baby wrapped tightly against me, my boy trudging at my side. After hours of walking, I found a stream that had not completely frozen. The water was bitterly cold, but I cupped it in my hands, letting my boy drink, whispering prayers of gratitude for even this small mercy. On the way back, I noticed something unusual, footprints that did not belong to me. My heart leapt into my throat. Fear pushed me to move quickly, to return home before whoever had left them could appear. That night I barely slept, every sound in the forest making me jolt awake. The following morning, when I stepped outside, I saw smoke rising in the distance. Another camp, another group of people. I did not know if they were friend or foe, but I dared not risk it. I withdrew deeper into silence, teaching my boy to stay quiet, to listen before stepping outside. The days blurred into weeks. I stitched scraps of cloth together to make thicker blankets. I carved small toys from wood for my boy, trying to keep his laughter alive. I hummed lullabies into the baby's ear, though my voice cracked from exhaustion. Every act, no matter how small, was a thread holding us together. Sometimes when I sat alone at night after they had fallen asleep, I would close my eyes and imagine a different world. A world where I had a home filled with warmth, where laughter replaced silence, where my children could run freely without fear. That dream became my secret fuel, the ember that kept me from collapsing. Part 4. Flickers of Hope. As the harshness of winter began to fade, the forest softened. Buds appeared on branches, the first signs of spring. I felt my spirit lift, cautious but hopeful. Food became easier to find. Wild greens sprouted, animals re-emerged. For the first time in months, I watched my boy eat until he was satisfied, his cheeks rosy again. The baby, now stronger, laughed at the play of sunlight on the floor. And I found myself laughing with him, but life never allows comfort for too long. One evening, as I returned from gathering herbs, I found the door of our house ajar. My heart stopped. Inside, the few supplies we had left were scattered. Someone had been there. My children, thankfully unharmed, hid beneath the blanket, their eyes wide with fear. Rage surged through me. This broken house, this fragile shelter, it was all we had, and even that had been violated. For a moment, I felt despair pressing down like a weight too heavy to bear. But then my boy reached out, touching my hand gently. "Mama, don't cry. We still have each other." His words pierced me, simple yet powerful. In that moment, I understood. Everything could be taken from me, home, comfort, even food. But as long as I still had them, I had enough to keep going. So I rose again. I cleaned the mess, gathered what remained, and held my children close. I whispered to them that we would be all right, that no matter how many storms came, we would endure. And though I trembled inside, I believed my own words. Part 5. Continuing journey. The days ahead remained uncertain. The forest was both cruel and kind, offering survival yet demanding everything in return. Strangers could appear at any time, bringing either help or harm. Loneliness would always linger like a shadow. But I had learned something through the months of struggle. Strength is not the absence of fear or pain. Strength is carrying on despite them because someone else depends on you. And so I continue. With each sunrise, I wake and choose to fight another day. With each night, I hold my children close, grateful we have survived one more storm. The future is still unknown, but the fire within me has not gone out. I am a mother, I am their shelter, and as long as I breathe, I will not let them fall. Total length of this English version, 30,000 high jump characters.